Welcome, everyone. Hope you all were able to get here safely. My name is Max Johnstone. I'm with the Mid-Coast Council of Governments. Tonight, my colleague, Matthew Eddy, and I will be going through our findings for the past few months regarding Building 126, or the administration building over at Mitchell Field. This has been a few months. I think we started back in August to put together a recommendation for what to do with the future of the building. Once the slide goes. There we go. Just some general background information. If you were here back in August, this is all very familiar to you. This was originally built in 1954 as part of the U.S. Navy's fuel depot for the Brunswick Naval Air Force Base. This is part of the 118.5 acres that town currently owns, known as Mitchell Field. The structure itself is about 7,704 square feet, according to the tax card here at the town office. Mitchell Field was transferred to the town back in 2001, and the building has been vacant for a few decades, with the only exception being storage for the harbor master. Now, the work that Matt and I have been doing since the August 30th workshop is that we've just been... Okay, I'm sorry. I'll speak up a little bit more. And I'll say that to people on Zoom as well as people in the audience. If I'm starting to mumble, and that tends to happen quite a bit, feel free to just raise your hand or just say, "Can you speak up, Max, for crying out loud?" So we've been looking through the previous work. I said all you had to do was just say, "Speak up, Max." I would like to have my hearing by the time I retire. Right. So other than that, we've been looking through the notes from the previous workshop. I think for those who were here, you remember the SWOT analysis with the billboards and all the notes people gave. The Phase 2 environmental site assessment was extended to all the other buildings that are at Mitchell Field and was actually completed very recently by Beacon Environmental Consultants. I'll go over that in just a moment. We were interviewing various nonprofits, town officials, contractors, and other potential leads for the use of the structure. And we've also been collecting some demolition rehabilitation estimates, which helped give us our recommendation. And we've also been looking at the draft comprehensive plan and previous versions of the Mitchell Field master plans for this report. And in terms of interviews, we've, again, spoken with some town staff members, the town administrator, the harbor master, recreational director, and the town planner, people who are most aligned to any work with the Mitchell Field property. We also spoke with the Mitchell Field Committee at their February meeting. We spoke with members of Harpswell Aging at Home, Harpswell Heritage Land Trust, the Harpswell Anchor, the benefactor, as everyone loves to give that code name for, and also the Curtis Memorial Library, specifically the individual who operates the bookmobile. And the purpose of tonight is to go over both of the options, the rehabilitation and demolition, including their pros, cons, potential estimates, and other notes to consider for the town. I'll then wrap up with our recommendation reasoning, and we'll get some public input before we settle things. One thing I do want to stress is that tonight is not going to be anything being set in stone. We are still going to have to write up the official reports and give it to the select board. Whether we are speaking at that select board meeting or just handing a piece of paper is going to be up to them. Now, the environmental site assessment that I just mentioned a moment ago, we literally got this last night. I think Matt and I both went home, we checked our emails and saw this in the morning, and so I didn't have too much time to actually read through everything. I had to just quickly skip to the conclusions to see what they found. And what the company did find was that there was asbestos found in the door caulking, there was PCB found in the caulking, as well as paint throughout the building. Lead paint was used on multiple surfaces of the building, and in the boiler room, there was an elevated concentration of arsenic. We have already started reaching out to the Maine Department of Environmental Protection to try and set up a meeting between them, the contractor, Beacon Environmental Consultants, as well as the town to try and see the next steps for what has to be done for the remediation. We can all take a quick breath first because there is remediation grant funding as well to help address this matter. Speaking of at least addressing the building, the first option was rehabilitation. Oh, that is going to be annoying throughout this night. As I said, I'll try and speak. If it means I don't have to hear that anymore, I will speak up.
Be a good boy.
Okay.
If you turn it up, it gets
Staticky. That's a little shock there.
prompts to speak up.
All right. So for rehabilitation, we spoke with the benefactor who said that they are still willing to donate towards the actual rehabilitation of the administrative building or administration building, not the garage. This is the main wing. And this is for rehabilitation purposes only. This isn't pre-planning. This isn't design work. This is just fixing the building itself. They are offering a substantial amount. I don't know if I'm comfortable really saying the amount right here, but that is something that we can get into a little bit later. I spoke with GE Roofing. They originally gave us an idea for how much it would cost to fix the roof back in 2018, I believe, and they updated the cost to about $190,000 to fix the roof. And this is them just updating their numbers. And this is actually going to be a common thing I'll say for the rest of the estimates. This is just these contractors coming out and giving a gut reaction. A more thorough site investment would have to be done if the town does decide to pursue a rehabilitation, as well as demolition, now that the environmental site assessments come back. As for repairs to the overall structure, Matt and I have been getting estimates between $250 to $350 per square foot. So for the main building, this could range from almost 1.4 million to almost $2 million. And for the garage, this is perhaps $550,000 to $770,000. Again, estimates. We might have a contractor who we didn't reach out to who could come in tomorrow and say, I could easily do that for half the price. But if rehabilitation takes an extra year or two, the prices could go up even further. So again, just estimates. We also did hear some ideas on masonry and cleaning up the inside. The masonry work does need to be addressed, and that could be $150,000 just for the main building. And a septic system would have to be installed depending on the use, and that would be a roughly $25,000 expense. After speaking with Mark, there is some ideas there is potential to install a septic system just to the east of the building. I'm sorry, can you not hear me?
No, I had a question.
I'll probably have questions at the end unless it's a quick.
Well, I just want to know if these numbers included the cost of remediation for the issues you found with the asbestos and the PFAS.
No. All these estimates came in. All these estimates were before remediation, and that's the big asterisk I have to give for these, as well as demolition. They all were going in assuming that this is just an empty brick building, nothing special about it. Because there is remediation, whoever ends up going into this building, whether it's fixing it up or tearing it down, they're going to have to also include the remediation costs and following DEP standards for cleaning it up. Continuing on the rehabilitation thought, we also spoke with many of the nonprofits in town about their potential interest in the building. During the August meeting, there were quite a few who were in attendance to expressed interest into being in that building. And the nonprofits have strongly shown their interest to investigate the building layout, design, possible funding options, and providing services at this building specifically. And this coalition does include the Harpswell Aging at Home group to pretty much be the lead when it comes to grants and coordination with the town. Harpswell Heritage Land Trust to assist with fundraising efforts and conducting some outdoor focus services. And speaking with the Curtis Memorial Library, there was a lot of people at the meeting back in August who expressed interest to have this as a library. The Curtis Memorial Library does offer a bookmobile that currently does go to Mitchell Field. It's only recently started the past year. They are open to collaboration if that is a way to try and reduce some of the cost for overlap. And as for demolition, as I just noted a moment ago, because hazardous materials were found, the cost to demolish the structure could be as high as maybe $200,000. Again, I have to speak with the town and DEP to see what the next steps are and how much this remediation could end up costing. Opinions appear to be almost just as divisive of whether to even build something in the place of this building versus just leaving it empty, possibly making it a parking lot. The municipality will likely have to cover the cost of demolition and possibly reconstructing a structure on the site. And that $250 to $350 figure, that would also likely be the cost to build a new structure, again, unless we have a contractor who's willing to come forward and say, oh, no, we can do it for a lot cheaper. The other item to think about with the demolition is that because the harbor master's vehicles and equipment currently are in that building, if the decision is to try and demolish the building as soon as possible, you have to answer, well, where does the harbor master's equipment go? He was very clear throughout this process that while it's a nice temporary place to have it up there, he would like to have a more central place here near the town office, although he doesn't mind a satellite space up there. He doesn't want a satellite space or any cost to go up to fixing that building to deter him from having a space here at the town office. And then for the post-demolition factors, there seem to be a lot of different opinions on what could be there instead of the administration building, whether this is general parking, boat trailer parking when the boat ramp is installed, creating an open-air pavilion, a sitting area, temporary or permanent restrooms, welcome center. There's a lot of opinions that I don't even know if we were able to go through all of them as well. And one of the concerns we kind of saw, which was a trend getting to this point, was there's certainly a lot of ideas for what could be there. And although it may be straightforward to do the demolition, there's no plan for what happens after the demolition. So if the decision is to demolish the building, there has to be a commitment for what happens after it, whether it is going to be one of these options or something else. The town needs to know what they want to do before that building comes down. And the cost to build a similar structure, as I said, would cost very similar. The only difference is if it's going to cost, let's say, $500,000 to fix the building and have everything we want in there, to demolish the building and then build something anew means you're demolishing it for possibly $200,000, then putting in that $500,000 expense. So if the town wants to do something with that building, it's almost better to do the rehabilitation, which does get me to the MCOG overall recommendations. And that is because based on the nonprofit interest, the benefactors still being willing to provide a donation, and the services that could be offered, MCOG is recommending to give the nonprofits an ability to rehabilitate the building for their uses. Our recommendation involves giving the nonprofits a time frame with milestone dates to privately fundraise the necessary amount to fix the building for their occupancy. Now, we want to stress that we are not recommending that the town general fund support the rehabilitation. Rather, we're suggesting offering a below-market rate lease to the nonprofits if they are able to successfully rehabilitate the structure, since this will be saving the town some financing for the demolition and potential future rehabilitation. And in leasing the structure, the nonprofit consortium will be responsible for maintaining the structure and sharing the ongoing operational support. Again, if there is some overlap for what the town wants in that building, and the nonprofits are now able to provide it, it's not coming at the expense of the town's general fund. Now, some more details regarding the lease. And again, these are all recommendations. We are suggesting to start with a 20-year lease that could be renewed, and the conditions would be in place to require the tenants to comply with the local standards and the restrictions associated with the Mitchell Field building, such as maintaining the building, only having certain uses allowed there, and anything else that the town would be comfortable with. MCOG advocates for no rent to be associated with the lease agreement. And that is, again, because the nonprofits are offering to save the town from demolishing the structure. If it goes through successfully, public restrooms and a septic system would now be installed to serve the public, which is something that seemed to be a need over at the Mitchell Field site. And the building will be available to all Harpswell residents for various programs and services, whether it is from the nonprofits specifically or from just a general meeting space that is offered and open to the public. The tenants of the administration building would be obligated to contribute to the snow removal, general property maintenance, and any other costs associated with improving the parking areas around the building. And as for a parking arrangement to the building, it should be given priority to the Harpswell residents seeking services, but should be publicly available to all when in the event of a larger events. And this goes to an earlier point about working things with the town. Obviously, when there's a large event, you're going to need as many parking spaces as possible. If the nonprofits are able to not be there for maybe one day when the large event is happening, you can at least save some parking spaces on that. Now, as for the timeline we're offering, we're suggesting a 2-year window for planning and fundraising. The first 3 months would be dedicated to outlining the building use, layout, and cost for the nonprofits, because if we have multiple nonprofits seeking 2,000 square foot each, and there's only 7,000 square foot in the entire structure, obviously you're going to have some conflicts of what people can and can't do. So that would be important to outline very early on. Following those 3 months, another 3-month period to develop potential sublease and standards for use and funding planning. This would be the nonprofits speaking with the select board, town administrator, and planner to outline what standards and restrictions would have to go to the building. Obviously, if both parties cannot agree on those terms, then there's no point in going with the fundraising efforts. If the terms can be agreed and a agreement can be reached with the town to not pursue any other actions and let the nonprofits go through the fundraising process, then the next 12 to 18 months would be identifying and pursuing potential grant sources, or funding sources, And keep in mind, these are only broad milestones that we are talking about. The town can obviously set some additional milestone dates. If the nonprofits are unable to meet all the milestone dates, then the select board would be authorized to seek demolition bids unless they decide to grant an extension. And the rehabilitation could be done in 2 different phases. One is focusing on the main wing, which seemed to be in a bit of a better condition compared to the garage. And obviously the garage would be the second phase to give the town a bit more time to plan on what would happen with the harbor master's equipment that's up there. Now, one thing I do want to also point out is this is all based on the assumption that the nonprofits will be able to organize in this time and are still interested in the administration building. We are aware that there are other potential properties that could be in town. So if tomorrow even, the nonprofits decide that there's another spot that's a lot more viable for them, then our recommendation's almost moot, and the select board can move forward with demolition at that point. Same thing if through any of these milestone timelines, if something changes, our recommendation is just focused on the nonprofits, and that's it. And then these are some potential grant resources that the nonprofits could pursue: Maine Community Foundation, the Congressional Directed Spending, which will be open hopefully in the next month, actually. The town of Harpswell I have the town of Harpswell up there not for the general fund or any other funding accounts, but rather as just a sponsor or a letter of support stating the interest in seeing this project through. There's also the Community Development Block Grants, the Stephen and Tabitha King Foundation. I mentioned earlier the DEP remediation grant to help clean up the hazardous materials. And while funding from the benefactor and private fundraising are available, the grants listed above are meant to help lower the estimated costs and also assist with long-term maintenance fees, administrative costs, and other expenses. And then this is some more general thoughts that Matt and I have come to when we looked at, yeah, I know. Because there was a lot more we kept finding as we were looking into this project. And so these are just overall thoughts we have for Mitchell Field, and we believe a plan needs to be done for the remaining buildings that are at the Mitchell Field site. The environmental assessment that I mentioned earlier does include all of them, the generator building, the one next to the community garden, the Century building. You now know what is in those buildings as well, and now that we've gone through this process, perhaps that can be repeated for ones such as the generator building, the Century building, for any potential uses that might be in there, whether it's storage or finding another potential use for it, maybe renting it out or other such uses. We are aware that because the boat ramp installation is likely going to happen, and because there is some increased interest at the Mitchell Field property over the last few years, there does need to be the implementation of a parking plan. We are aware that one was being worked on for some time, and it just is sort of in this limbo state. You do need some more parking up there eventually. Whether the building stays or goes, you'll need more parking as time goes on, and as residents, there's more residents moving to Harpswell, there's more people from even Brunswick coming over and seeing this site. The town should also begin to outline a 5-year plan to relocate the equipment and vehicles in the administration building, assuming that the town does not want the satellite location that I mentioned earlier for the equipment at Mitchell Field. That's a discussion that really should start. Again, even if whether the building's being reused or demolished, the harbor master has been very clear he would like to have a more permanent home for his equipment. And considering how much the equipment and vehicles are, I would assume you would want a safe place to put that as well. So what are we doing after this? We are going to put together a written report that is based on this presentation and any input that we are gathering tonight. We're also going to give about a week or so that people have chances to comment, and we'll hear some more from Christy. Sorry, Christy, you will likely get some emails from this. We are going to provide our recommendation to the representatives at the town office and to the nonprofit coalition to meet and outline terms for a potential agreement. The proposal is subject to decision by the select board at a later date, not tonight, unless they want to make a very interesting play today. And again, based on what the select board will determine that night, it could include a special town meeting later this year. If approved, the town will commit to no further action on the building until the time granted to the nonprofits runs out. While we do outline a 2-year time period, the select board may try to make that a lot sooner or give a little more leeway. That is a decision up to the select board and to the town as a whole. And again, we're not recommending the town offer any funding at this time, but rather just provide letters of support and documentation to the nonprofits so they can continue pursuing some grant funding. And then some final thoughts. It doesn't matter what position you had. It doesn't matter if it was demolition, rehabilitation, fixing the roof but not having a plan, making a parking lot, making it bathrooms. Everyone could agree on one thing. Something needs to be done to this building. And right now, there is interest from the nonprofits with multiple revenue streams available to actually fix this up, and the town can now avoid expenditures if this is done successfully. And there is also the fact that the town can also just do the demolition plan. Matt and I are only recommending rehabilitation, but the town does have the right to choose demolition. However, if remediation and rehabilitation is possible by the nonprofits, then the town can avoid the cost, and if they can't do it, then it is just as easy to still slip to the demolition option. But once the town commits to demolition, there is no going back because the building will be gone, and you will have to now pay for a new building if you decide later on you did need something like it. The last point we will raise is that with the timing of a new planner with Mark Ironman set to retire later this year, I know Mark is online. Hi, Mark. And with the updated comprehensive plan, I believe going to the May meeting, seeking approval in May, and now that we have concluded this process, it does warrant further discussion on how active of a role the town wants to have regarding this parcel as a whole. I've outlined that the other buildings are in almost a similar state as the administration building, with no plan set forward, what role does the town want to have with those buildings? Rehabilitation, demolition, or leaving it for an undisclosed period of time, or bringing in another third party? I don't know. Matt, what's our schedule look like this summer?
We're always flexible.
We're always flexible. So that's it for the presentation. We'll open it up to questions and comments from the audience. And there's just our contact information, very briefly, for those who are interested. All right, and with that, I'm going to stop the screen share. All right. Does anyone have any thoughts?
You didn't address water.
Water is another concern in that area. Oh, mic was off for a second there.
For everybody, I'm talking about potable water. Can't occupy the building if you don't have,
Hit that microphone.
I did.
Okay, great.
Can't occupy the building if we don't have potable water.
I was just trying to get this. This is what I get for. Yeah, I'll just stay fixed on this one then. Potable water will be very similar to the septic system. One part we had to wait on was the testing of the site, just because they were looking at the soils as well. It's unfortunately another larger expense. We felt the rehabilitation of the building and the construction and demolition costs alone were going to already be a pretty high expense. That's all I really have right now for the potable water item, unless.
And I believe also the remediation talked a little bit about the water and doing some additional work on understanding what the pump rate was and how the contamination could potentially impact that with a larger pump rate.
Other questions?
Testing. Is that picking up?
Well, we'll find out.
Okay, you talked about the cost of demolition. That I'm assuming that cost would be borne by the town, is that right?
Yes.
Okay, so we're talking about keeping the building and having that financed primarily through the nonprofits, but the demolition would be something that would have to be included in the town budget, right? Okay, thank you.
Except the remediation, that's something that DEP does have grant funding for to try and address. Yes.
Oh, sorry. Is there any input regarding the beauty of the building? If it were to be rehabbed, I remember a lot of discussion was centered around making it a more lovely building than what it is currently, and the roof line, et cetera. So do we have any, not knowing who the benefactor and what their plan is, is their desire to have it exactly as it stands? Or is there an opportunity to make it a prettier building?
I think we heard a little bit of both, that there's a real desire to have the building as it is because of the reasons that she's interested in the building. However, she's open to discussion and design. And I think really our point in all this is that with the nonprofits, we can get into a little bit of more of the building design that's a little past our capacity. And at that point, you're really talking about using an architect and some visual approaches to that.
Any questions either in the room or on Zoom?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
I believe so. Can you state your name just for the...
Okay, absolutely. This is Amy Heibel.
Yep,
I'm sorry, I'm calling in here.
no worries.
I want to say, thank you for this report and for all those who are have worked on it and who are interested in this. It's very much appreciated. I want to just say in perspective that the demo costs really aren't that much. So for the town to have to absorb the demolition costs, I think perhaps we should just bear in mind that the town could easily absorb those. They're not unreasonable. The town probably spends more than that on one road per year, but regardless of that, it's a building, it's there, and people really enjoy it and they see uses for it. Your statement that rebuilding, your statement that the demolition costs would be high, has to be taken into account that if folks wanted to really put up a new library or put up a place for boats to be stored or whatever, they might not use that site. So the site is a fixed location, and that's fine, but it does not allow for flexibility. And it may be that in the long run, another site would actually be more beneficial for those that want to use the building. But all that aside, I think that those that want to reuse the building, great for them, good for them. It's wonderful to have the interest in the town. One thing I hope we don't lose sight of is that this site is one of the largest, most important open spaces on the East Coast north of the Chesapeake Bay. And I hope that as we look at reusing buildings on this site, that we keep that in mind, and that it may be a very valuable thing to work with either an educational resource, natural resource, like a gardening center, like Maine Coast Heritage Trust, or the Maine Coast Botanical Gardens, or Bowdoin College, to use this site, at least in part, as a natural resource and an education center. And so focusing on these buildings is great, but let's not make decisions about the buildings that would preclude using the site as a major natural resource base on the East Coast. I just want to make that clear. Thank you very much. Appreciate all your work.
Thank you. Were those statements that you would like me to address, or were they just more general comments?
Spike Heibel.
Hi, Spike.
Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Spike Heibel, Chair of the Mitchell Field Committee. One thing I didn't hear in your report at all is that, and I did step out of the room for a few minutes, but are two things, and one in particular is that the Mitchell Field Committee went through a very long and we thought very thorough process of surveying townspeople about the uses of Mitchell Field. And the reason that that MCOG was brought in is because the admin building in particular raised the question of, I don't know enough to say whether it should stay or go, and that's legitimate. That was a good result from the survey. However, many of those people who took that survey also said, I want to see the field change, I don't want to see more construction, I don't want to see more parking, I don't want to see this, I don't want to see that. There's a very strong base of people who would like to see it more as a park-like setting with some amenities, such as, converting the space where the admin building is to, more green space, especially given that there's going to be possibly a boat launch. We don't even know at this point. But giving them a little more room for green space and what I called back in 2000, late 18, a welcome center. In other words, a place where you could have your bathroom and have some, some minor uses that would benefit people up in the field. But mostly people want to go there and spend time sitting, enjoying the beach, enjoying the trails and the walking, and just generally enjoying it. And I don't, you can't look at the admin building in isolation from all that. And you can't look at it in isolation from the beautiful boat launch we've designed which we're still waiting to hear about permitting on, and final costs. But if that is a project that is to go forward, that really speaks to, is the admin building a good piece of the puzzle down there at the waterfront at this point? And my last comment is that someone said that they wanted to return the admin building to its previous glory, and I fundamentally think that that is an unglorious structure. You know, you'd have to do some massive amounts of work to make that kind of a industrial, pitched roof, single roof, all brick clad, very few windows structure, something that's attractive. You would just be basically painting it up a little bit in a certain sort of metaphorical way, and not doing something really interesting down there. And I would find that to be a real shame. That's it. Thank you.
Well, and oh wait, hold on. I'm sorry. One sec. Peter, is there something Okay, just need to make sure we're good on the recording. Just very quickly on the question portion of it, we did kind of know earlier that there was a lot of divisive opinions when it came to what happens even if the building's being torn down. You were mentioning that some people probably just want to turn it into green space, and that's fine. That's a legitimate item that some people would like to see. But then it also brings back the parking question that I also seem to hear a lot at the Mitchell Field Committee meeting, where there was concerns about, regardless of what the future use is going to be, people need to park somewhere at that site, especially during some larger events. And right now with the admin building, if it is able to be rehabilitated, it's already impervious surface. It's already right there. If you can fix it and turn it into an area for public restrooms and have a little sit-down area that could be sort of a welcome center, and depending on the discussions between the town and the nonprofits, it could essentially be a welcome center at that point. So I don't know if that answers your question. As for the second point of saying it's a brick building and it's not really that beautiful, I can't change people's opinions on aesthetics. I honestly can't. It comes down to people's opinions on those things. I'm sorry I don't have that piece in the PowerPoint presentation, everyone. So I do. Yeah, I see. Please just state the name for the Zoom people.
Yeah, my name is Philip Connor, and I've been interested in this for a long time. One of the problems that you mentioned that I'd answer is parking, and we have realized that's a problem down there a lot, and we went over it quite a bit and studied the situation, and there are a number an easy solution to it is to put a number of different parking places around the field. They can be dispersed around, and there's a number of locations for that. It's a solvable problem, and can be done without putting great sheets of asphalt out there. We could put in permeable parking and disperse it around so you wouldn't notice it so much. As far as the question of tearing it down or using it for another purpose, we're talking about spending a few $100,000, a couple hundred, few $100,000 to tear it down and plant grass. That money would cost us money, and we have the option of finding a way to build it back into something that a lot of people could get some use out of and enjoyment, and that would be paid for not by the town. We also have the ability to go through the process of trying to figure out how to do that, and if it doesn't work, then we can come back and spend the money to tear it down. But I think you've done a really good job on your report. I think the options are really good. I think a lot of the details, it'll be interesting to see how the details really come out, but it sounds good to me, and I applaud you for doing it. So thank you.
Thank you. Can I get this back here? Other questions, comments, notes on the weather?
It's spring today.
It is spring.
Hard to tell. Seems like February again.
I saw that.
I'm sorry.
No, it's all right.
Something that Philip just alluded to, but I just wanted clarification on it. If the town opts to move forward with keeping the building,
Yep.
and that money comes from a benefactor. I think I remember in one of your slides, the septic does not come out of that, the parking does not come out of that, the roof does not come out of that, the garage does not come out of that. Am I correct? So the town still is paying for all of those things.
The benefactor was clear that they want their portion of the donation to go strictly to fixing the main building itself, not the garage, and it was to just be the building. So the septic would have to be addressed. I believe the roof was still fine with the benefactor. But to answer your question of the town still paying for it, we're not recommending the town's paying for it through at least the general fund. We are suggesting private donations from residents who are interested in the building. Our recommendation is Our recommendation is not 100% saying the town should just fix the building and call it a day. Our recommendation is more of saying to the nonprofits, you get one chance to do this. So get together, and if there really is interest in this town to save the building, now is your chance to do it.
Can I say another thing?
Yeah, sure. And I'm sorry, just while you're doing that, can you just state your name for the recording?
Jay Khalil.
Thank you.
The funding of the thing, I believe that a project like this really ought to be done by supporters of Harpswell, not by the town of Harpswell. And I think there's plenty of people in Harpswell that could support it if they were properly motivated. And I think that can happen, and I would sure like to see it done that way. As far as the beauty of the structure, it's all buildings, or most buildings, are made up of walls and a roof, and somehow they figure out a way to make it attractive or unattractive. That one is just walls, and if you put a roof on it of some sort or did some architectural treatment to it, and you opened up windows that exposed the waterfront to it, you could make a very attractive building there, and it wouldn't look like the one that's there right now. So anyway, just thought I'd add those points.
And then just very quickly, since I'm not seeing any hands, and just for the sake of Marianne in the back and the recording, I'll just read off some Zoom comments that aren't technical related. Robin Dwyer said that Amy raised an excellent point earlier, and then a Julianne Moulton, hopefully I got that name right, said that this is an absolutely beautiful space. I don't understand why it would be used as a parking lot that would serve a few as opposed to serving the community. And that's all I have, at least on Zoom. Any final thoughts? Or is there a hand up there?
Well, you've done such a great job that there's very few questions. I mean, that just bodes to how well you've done.
I know, I'm trying to stretch out the time here for my timesheets. He gets it. But all right. I got to reset this back to the middle then. Well, if there's no other questions or comments, I'll be sticking around. Matt will probably stick around for a little bit in case people do have some questions that they want to ask afterwards. But if not, I want to thank everyone who is here in person and everyone who is on Zoom and anyone who's going to be watching this recording a bit later for coming out, showing their interest in this, and we hope you'll enjoy the final report when we submit it. Thank you.